Good to have you here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, been out today. He'll be back with us tomorrow on the program, but it is the final day, or at least so it has been decreed by Major League Baseball, BJ, that either you get a deal done today, we're going to start canceling games, not making them up, not rescheduling them. You're not getting paid for them. We're not doing them. Get it done today. And, well, for the people covering the game, most people say, well, it's not going to happen today. So Major League Baseball, the players in a high-stakes, high-leverage game of chicken, and it appears like at the end, everybody's going to lose. Because I don't care what you say, whether you agree with the owners, whether you agree with the players, if there's no baseball, everybody loses. Right? The fans lose who support the game. The players lose because they're going to lose part of their paycheck, which to some is more of a hit than others. And the owners lose because the product they're trying to uphold takes a hit, and thus people are mad at them. So there are no winners in locking it out. And the fact that, again, it took 2 months to even sit down, the fact that these guys procrastinated worse than a high school senior trying to do their homework to get this deal done is embarrassing. I mean, you waited literally until there was a week left to try to talk for more than 10 minutes. You met once, 15 minutes. Hey, we'll see you in 10 days. You met, this has all been handled poorly. And both sides are dug in on things they really, really want. At the end of the day, BJ, in today's era, in today's economy, I think what most fans want is you to play. We understand the economics. We understand players want a larger piece of the pie. We understand that the owners want to keep as much as they want. That's business. We understand that part. But at the end of the day, I said this last week. NHL went through a lockout, lost a whole season. Games were played on the Golf Channel. I'm going to say that again. I don't think baseball's in as bad a shape as hockey, but when hockey had a lockout, missed a whole season, when they came back, you could watch hockey on the Golf Channel. And it's taken them a while to kind of get back, and they're back making money. The NBA owners gave in a little bit. I think you have Adam Silver, a little bit more understanding in some cases. They've been a little bit differently, gave the players more of a piece of the pie. Guess what? Everybody's making profits. Everybody's making money in the NBA, right? We've seen the average league. NFL, most popular sport on the planet. And I would say there's not a more hate. Well, Rob Manfred's getting close, but Roger Goodell is not beloved by the players, right? He's not generally beloved by the players in the National Football League as the guy who is the face of the National Football League. They've had negotiations. They've worked out some differences. They fought through their contention, and guess what? Everybody's making bank. The owners are making huge money in the National Football League. The players are making huge money in the National Football League. It can happen. You know, when you don't make a lot of money in professional sports, when you don't play. And I think that's where baseball finds itself. And unfortunately, it doesn't appear like they're going to be able to sit back and say, if we concede on a couple of things, we're still going to make money. Kind of reminds me of the speech that Paul Giamatti, remember the boxing movie Cinderella Man. He goes, listen, if this happens, you make more money. And if this happens, you make more money. Either way, your pockets are getting stuffed. And I kind of feel like this is what the commenter is saying to Major League Baseball, to the owners, and the players go, listen, work out a deal, and I know you want your fair share, players, but owners, however this shakes down, you're going to make money. It is proven in professional sports you're going to make money. And I will sit here and argue about baseball is dying stuff. And you don't realize how many people came and watched the Atlanta Braves last year? I know they were a World Series team, but prior to that, they were having huge attendance last year. Minor League Baseball has seen attendance go up. College baseball has seen attendance go up. The game of baseball is not dying, but it does need fixing in terms of minor league pay scale. They've addressed some of that. Provided housing for minor league. You've provided for the bottom up in some ways that you haven't done before. Now you got to work on the major league level. And BJ, I know I'm kind of filibustering here and talking about, I get passionate about this because people talk bad about baseball. And it's a good game. There's great stars. There are widely known folks in Major League Baseball right now, prime of their career, Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, Freddie Freeman, great stars, Tatis, young stars, Acuna Jr., Soto. But that means nothing if they're not playing. And I think at the end of the day, Major League Baseball, I will tend to side with the players a little bit, but owners, you're going to make money. Like if you provide a path for a healthy game, you will make money, and probably more than you think you're going to make in this new CBA if you can get it done. And again, it doesn't look like they're going to.
I've been very pessimistic through all this, as you know, in part because of what you referenced in that opening stance there. It doesn't feel like this has been something that there's been a sense of urgency to, right? I mean, you had the lockout in December and it was like, oh, okay, well, we'll get to it. And then there were meetings that last longer than or last shorter than most average lunch days, for people. And then, the commissioners just now getting involved and the concessions aren't being made. And I get it. I understand it's complex. I understand it's difficult. I don't want to sit here and speak from afar and say, hey, just do it, when I get that there are difficulties on both sides. But I've been very concerned about what could be through all this. Are we talking about a regular season that's shortened? Are we talking about a regular season that is significantly shortened? Are we talking about damage to the perception of baseball? Normally spring training would be well underway, right? And we'd be talking about spring training games and would have storylines to talk about and be talking about roster battles and all that good stuff. And now we have
we're talking about battles.
But we have way more questions than answers. I mean, when is baseball starting? How long is the season going to be? How long is spring training going to be? Will there be a spring training? And I'll ask you this. I've always deferred to your kind of judgment with baseball. You have a good sense for what's happening. But when I hear games are going to be missed, I think my first thought is, okay, well, maybe we miss a week of games or 2 weeks of games, and that would not be good. But I don't think that would be irreparable. Is there a chance we could be talking about a month of games missed, a half a season missed? I mean, once you go down this road of missing games, I guess in your mind, having covered the sport closely your entire career, what is the worst case scenario?
Well, I mean, obviously the worst case scenario is you can't come to terms on anything and you miss the whole season. I don't think that's going to happen. There's too much money at stake. And I know people have said that from the beginning, but you have television partners that if there's no games, you have to give them their money back. You're not making money off of that. And so I think there are some clauses in there where these teams and owners have impetus to get games on TV because they need the incoming money from rights deals. And again, if there's no games to show, they're not going to pay. So I think there are some markers in there. I think most people think they'll miss a week or two. And I think the bottom line is the owners know if they're really dug in, they can outweight the players all day. Right. I mean, I know that I saw something today where the players were going to have stipends sent out of like $15,000 starting once they start missing games or something like that. I'm like, that's a help. But that's still, if you're the owners, you can outweight them. You have more money. You have more time. This is but one piece of your portfolio. And I think a lot of people look at it and say, okay, if I own the Cincinnati Reds, this would be my sole focus. No. When you own the Cincinnati Reds, that is a piece of your portfolio. You probably like baseball in some sense, but at the end of the day, you're like, well, I mean, balance sheet looks pretty good. I'm making money. Let me go worry about this other thing. So I don't know. I wish that there were some more mature voices in the room earlier in this scenario, because it seems like neither side has come up with. I mean, it's one of those things, and I've said it like akin to buying a house, or like, it seems like all the proposals, like you're going to make an offer, is going to get rejected, but we're going to make the offer and put it out there and let everybody know that the other side rejected it. Well, that's not really a deal. I mean, and again, I know there's been some minor concessions both ways, and I think both sides have played this poorly. I mean, the players gave some concessions and then came back later and said, just kidding, we're going up. We're going the other direction on this number. So I think you've seen both sides kind of fumble it a little bit. I do think at the end of the day, both sides lose. I think people always, you see people duke it out on social media. It's like, why are you siding with the billionaire owners and not the players who are out here just trying to get their fair share? At the end of the day, most people don't care about either one of those things. They want that, because again, most people look at it and say, I get you want what's fair. I get you want what's, but now we're arguing over whether a first-year Major League Baseball player should make $675,000 or $750,000. That's what we're arguing about on some of these things. All right, that's more than
But you agree.
98%
But you
of the
agree.
people in
Most
America are
people
gonna make.
don't care about the minutia
No,
of
they
the
don't. They
of
want-
the
they-
disagreement.
they want the
Right.
sport.
That's what I'm saying.
That's why I say both of them lose.
So here's my question: when I ask this, I'm asking from the standpoint of the fan, because I think all of us are fans of baseball, want to see baseball. Up until today, and today is the day where if it's not done by whatever o'clock, we're not going to have a full season per the MLB owners.
Right from the commissioner.
Assuming we don't get to that point, and that we're not close today on a Monday, what's going to make them close on a Tuesday? What's going to make, because that's my question from
Pressure,
the standpoint
time, and lost money. That's it.
I guess, but when is that threshold crossed? Because you would imagine you would have already crossed it at the idea of missing games. If I'm baseball fan A, and maybe I am, I'm looking around going, I can deal with a week's missed games. I can deal with maybe 10 games fewer. But my question is, if on a Monday we are very far apart and we don't like each other and the sides are not close, next Monday, is it going to be different? Monday after that, is it going to be different? And I guess what I'm getting at is there a chance at the end of all this, we're not only talking about some games missed, and I hate to bring it, but a substantial number of games missed?
I still think at the end of the day, somebody is going to get in people's ears and say, all right, if you get to this point, you will have lost X number of millions of dollars. And maybe somebody goes to the players and goes, look, if it gets to this point, you as a union will have paid out X number of $1 million to the union members because they're not playing baseball. Our coffers, as it will only get you another month or whatever it's going to be. Like we can afford to pay however many members of the union there are for another 2 months out of our coffers and kind of the pension plan. After that, got to ride it out on nothing. And some players will be fine. Some players probably won't be. I think the real travesty, BJ, is as a fan, you're not just deprived of games, right? You're not just deprived of, okay, there's no product. You're looking at several players. We're deprived of Ronald Acuna for X number of how long? In really up and coming prime years. We're deprived of Fernando Tatis. We're deprived of Mike Trout. We're deprived of Freddie Freeman, who is in that window. We talked about it on the show. Freddie Freeman is in that window where he could be a Hall of Famer. He has to get certain probably statistical milestones. All right. COVID already eliminated over half a year for all these cats. Are you willing to throw away another half a year of a career, basically a whole season's worth? For a number of guys, that could be the difference in being a Hall of Famer and just being another guy, being a really good dude who played Major League Baseball. I'm not saying that matters to everybody, but to a lot of people it does.
But you miss everything. Close. You miss everything that comes with the games, everything that comes with the history, that comes with the context. I said this, I think, a couple of weeks ago when some of the doubts started to become more prominent. Baseball, because some folks will say, well, listen, what's the difference in 162 and 152? Well, baseball is a sport where the reverence is the longevity of the regular season. Sure. That's what defines baseball in some respects, is how long the regular season is, how long of a grind it is, the stats that come with that, the history that comes with that. Maybe every sport is this way, but I think when you start taking games off and it affects kind of the historical frame of reference, the context that you made point to, I think baseball is really going to miss out. I think they will. And again, I think for a lot of fans, you look at it and it is of the things that need to be fixed when you're talking about, oh, we don't want a salary a cap, or we don't want, most people, I think only 2 teams went over the luxury tax last year. So most people are adhering to some of that. They're not going to go over where they have to pay money. I think, to me, the biggest problem in baseball is that there isn't a cap. It's worked well in other sports where guys are making plenty of money at the top. It's not, to me, the whole thing about the cap now is it's not the guys at the top that aren't making enough. It's the guys in the middle and the bottom. And to me, the bigger problem is the teams that don't spend versus the teams that do. Case in point, you just had Derek Jeter up and leave the Miami Marlins today and said, hey, there's a little difference in direction. I get it. Everybody's going to put their PR spin out there, but at least saw one report saying Derek Jeter wanted the Marlins to spend $15 to $20 more million. His goal was, hey, I want the Marlins to spend $15 to $20 more million on the payroll. And they weren't willing to do it because of the lockout. And he's like, well, how are you going to compete with that? And so I think that's the problem to me with Major League Baseball is get everybody to spend at least a certain amount and everybody wins. You should get more competitive teams that would be willing to sign and give better contracts to players, go out and get free agents
for a better value and not it be an all or nothing where it's like, we're either going to pay a couple of dudes 40, 50 million and everybody else gets the minimum, or we're just going to completely stink for 3 years and hope we win with guys on rookie deals. That's a tough sell to me in Major League Baseball, and I don't know why that's not getting more talk about in these meetings as opposed to everything on the top end and some of those things. But again, I am but one guy, BJ Bennett, and it appears we are headed down the path towards no baseball, at least for the short term, as these negotiations continue on. They met earlier this morning. I think as of right before the show, they had just gone back in to start meeting again after about 2 or 3 hours off. So they spend more time meeting with each other, it seems like, than they do. When I say each other, baseball with its owners and the players with their little caucus, than they do with each other face to face. And that's certainly not been productive to this point. We got plenty to get to here on the show. We'll chat with Buck Belue when we return. Braves Radio Network. What does this mean for the Braves? What does this lockout do for the sport of baseball if they're not able to reach a deal? Also, Shane Hallam, Draft Countdown, will join us. The Combine this week. Several players have already said they're not working out. What do you get out of the Combine if you get a substantial number of guys not working out? Also, Jake Roos, Dogs HQ on the On3 network. Stacy Searles back in as Georgia offensive line coach. So we'll talk to him about that. Also, Damian Moss, former Braves pitcher, will join us, and we'll talk about this thing from the players' side of things when he joins us coming up in the final hour. But Buck Belue will join us next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Baseball continues to negotiate, if you will, here. The final day is set forth by the commissioner of Major League Baseball to try to get a deal done before we miss games in the regular season. A lot of pessimism that that's actually going to happen. And joining us here on the program with the Braves Radio Network, Buck Belue joins us here on 3 and Out. Buck, welcome to the show. How are you?
Man, we're doing well. Just trying to keep up here. Got a lot of things going on.
Absolutely. As a guy who has followed the Braves and coming off that magical run of a season ago, I mean, how devastating is this for just the baseball fan in our neck of the woods in general, where you come off of the ultimate high to potentially no baseball for however long they see fit, I guess.
Well, it just seems it's really frustrating. You know, you got the owners that aren't really negotiating in good faith. This is as if Rob Manfred and these owners, want to set the game back. They want to miss part of the season, take these players to their knees. So, as a Braves fan, it's really frustrating. I know a lot of your listeners are feeling it. This is part of the glory of winning the World Series. Is coming back the next year and buying up all that gear and packing the house at Truist Park. And, looks like we're going to get cheated a little bit, apparently. So it's frustrating, man. And then we got that Freddie Freeman situation to worry about also. So it's sort of a double whammy right now.
Buck, when you hear reports that the MLBPA and the owners are not close, I mean, what do you think that could mean? We hear missing games and opening day not being on time, but could we miss a couple of weeks? Could we miss a month? I mean, what do you think is the worst case scenario here?
Well, I'm just assuming smart people will eventually, cut a deal here. There's got to be some give and take going on. And I'm happy to see you got the Players Association trying to, make some positive changes too, taking care of the younger players, seeing if, perhaps they can ease up on that length of the arbitration, how long that goes on, the control over the players. So it'd be nice to see those younger guys make a little bit bigger slice of the pie, just as a former minor leaguer talking here. But, you would like to think that at some point they'll wake up and start negotiating and get something done here, because nobody wants to lose money. It's a business, obviously, on both sides. And look, I know there's got to be some give and take, but, as a fan, you just want to see the 162. So I'm already frustrated here thinking, okay, we're not even going to be able to see a full season here.
Absolutely. And Buck, obviously, players trying to get a larger piece of the pie as baseball's been, profitable. I know it came out last week about the Braves coming out of the COVID year, how successful that franchise was in making money. How does baseball fix that, where you have, 7 or 8 teams that really don't mind spending money, and then you have 4 or 5 at the bottom that try their best to not spend any money? Are you surprised that the players have been focused on not having a cap and not making sure that, players can get paid more by kind of forcing the hand of teams to actually put up a respectable salary on their roster?
Yeah, I mean, reasonable minds, you would think they could sit down and do a deal that's good for both the owners and the players union. But I don't know, man. I mean, it doesn't look good. It sounds like they were yelling at each other on Saturday, and I'd just like to be in the room to see what's really going on here.
I know you talk with fans on a daily basis. What do you think the fan response is going to be right now? And if we miss more time, I mean, is this something where baseball could really hurt itself in terms of fan perception?
Well, I think here in Braves country, as soon as they, say, okay, here's opening day, these fans are going to flood through here this year. Just being a part of the World Series title a year ago, you want to be a part of it. You're anxious to get out and support the team. So I think Atlanta will be fortunate. They'll be one of the organizations where the fans are going to come rushing back in there to be a part of it this summer. So, we're hoping for the best, obviously. Right now it looks bad, but I just don't have a lot of faith in Rob Manfred. As soon as he jerked the All-Star game out of Atlanta for political reasons, I tell you what, at that point in time, I just threw my hands up at him.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have not much love lost for Rob Manfred as the commissioner of Major League Baseball. Buck obviously said something hanging out there over Braves country is Freddie Freeman. I know you see reports of he's likely going to do something else when teams aren't supposed to be talking with players at this time. What in your gut do you kind of feel this situation sits at, where you didn't get a deal done before this lockout? Now you just kind of been sitting here for a couple of months, and now if a deal is reached today, next week, whatever, you enter the fast-paced world of short-term free agency there leading up to the season. How do you think it sits right now between the Braves and Freddie and the Braves?
Well, that's a really good question. I wished I had a good answer for you there. They're not supposed to be negotiating at this point in time until there's a deal done, but you wonder about those things. And the thing that scares me is you got the Dodgers needing a first baseman capable of writing that big check and giving him the 6 years. And, we're just looking right here at what is the market value. And for Freddie Freeman, it's going to be $27 to $30 million a year for 4 or 5 years. And look, that it just got me wishing that Ted Turner still owned the Braves. I think if Mr. Turner was running the show, he'd go ahead and cut the check too. But that's Freddie's home out in Los Angeles, and sounds like they're willing to give him market value. So I'm concerned about that, and his days are going to be over with here in Atlanta. The rumor that the Braves have already got Plan B ready to go and ready to plug in another first baseman that's with the Oakland A's right now. Olson, big left-handed hitter. He's sort of Freddie Freeman light with a skill set. But gosh, the thing he can hit 30 home runs and play a Gold Glove first base, and he still can't replace what Freddie's bringing to the table, the face of the organization. You got a guy that's the leader of the team and a guy that is a grinder. I mean, he's showing up and he's looking to play 160 games a year. The manager's going to have to, Coach Snitker's going to have to fight to get him out of the lineup, and that just spills over the entire team. He's expecting those other guys to show up and play on a day where they're not feeling physically ready to go out there and play, and that's one thing you just can't replace. That's part of the reason the Braves won the World Series. I just think that the Braves with Liberty Media, there's a budget, obviously, and the Braves have a reputation for being fiscally responsible. But they've already got Acuna and Albies on these team-friendly contracts, and it just doesn't seem right to let Freddie Freeman walk at this point in time. And the rub is not giving him that 6th year when he's 38 years old. But with the DH around, looking at Freddie, I think he's still going to be able to swing the bat. Maybe not $30 million worth. But, it's disappointing it's come down to this. There's no doubt about it. At this point, I think, the sources, the people I'm close to are saying you better get ready for the idea that Freddie's going to perhaps be in that Dodger uniform.
Buck, if the Braves don't re-sign Freddie Freeman, obviously you get a healthy Ronald Acuna back. You have some talented guys elsewhere, of course. I mean, can this team maintain the momentum? Will the Braves still be one of the favorites to win the World Series, or do you take a step back without Freddie Freeman in your mind?
Well, again, I don't think that some of the things he brings to the table you just can't replace. And look, Olson looks like the guy that he looks like a really legitimate Plan B, and he's an Atlanta kid. 30 home runs last season, over 100 RBIs. He plays first base really well, and the Braves have the prospects to be able to get a deal done with the A's. If that's the direction the Braves are going to go when this lockout ends and they get a new agreement, that looks like a really good Plan B to me. Plan C, it doesn't look so good. So hopefully, that might be able to work out for them if it comes to that.
I was going to say, Buck, if you talk about what Freddie Freeman means to the organization, I mean, if you look throughout the minor leagues, there's not a big-time projected first baseman in the minor league system right now, is there?
Well, no, they don't have anybody ready to step in. Organization, which is, a little bit crazy. So I don't even want to hear about moving Austin Riley over there to first base. I mean, coming off the season he had last year at third base, I mean, the last thing you want to do now is tell him we need you to go over there and play a little first base. That that doesn't seem like a legitimate option to me.
Buck Belue, our guest here on Three and Out, 680 The Fan and Atlanta Braves Radio Network. Buck, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, good to be with you guys. Keep up the good work down there.
Will do. Thanks so much. Buck Belue joining us here on Three and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back to 3 and Out. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. Glad to have you here on this Monday, 912-342-7184. Baseball edging closer to missing games, which less than a month ago, Rob Manfred said would be disastrous. So the commissioner said it would be disastrous, and he is the late arriving front of a side that has not yet come to a deal.
Can I say this? He's not doing a good job. I mean,
oh, that's putting it nicely. He's
seriously,
been not doing a
what
good
is
job.
he doing? I mean, I'm asking you. You're the baseball expert.
If I can answer that question, maybe I would be running Major League. Look, I thought it was a bad look. When you have labor negotiations, like I understand that Rob Manfred works for the owners, much like Roger Goodell works for the owners in the National Football League. And there are owners that have been meeting with the players. But your job as the commissioner is to oversee the health of the game in which you are the commissioner of. Yes, you represent the owners, but you are in charge of the administrative face of the league, and you are in charge of the health of said league. Rob Manfred showed up on Friday. They met every day last week, right? I'm not making this part up.
But that's what I'm
they
asking,
met
Kevin.
Last week,
how does
and
that?
The commissioner
how does
showed
that
up
happen?
on Friday.
How does that happen?
Because you suck at your job, like Rob Manfred does. I mean, that's
well put. When the sport is on the brink. I mean, and as you said, you even quoted a month ago the possibility of a disastrous set of circumstances, meaning no opening day, and we're a couple of hours away from that being a reality. And based on all the reports we're reading, that is the reality, right? Didn't you just say they just got done meeting, whatever that means?
They were meeting for a second time this afternoon. Maybe they'll get back together. They kind of go talk for a little bit, then go back to their respective sides to break it down. I have not seen anybody comment further on that. But no, I mean, when the NFL and the players had their kind of collective bargaining on the last go round, I don't remember ever there being a time when Roger Goodell was just not there. Right, like Roger Goodell would come out and you could say, oh, he's, making his PR shill for the owners. Okay, fine. But the commissioner of the league was at the meetings. He was at the talks. Rob Manfred was not there for 4 days during your an agreement.
What was he doing?
That would determine the
what was
future
he
of the
doing?
sport.
What was he doing?
Playing golf? I don't know. I mean, like I said, there are certain times, and we joke, in this business of sports behavior, there's certain times you probably don't get some days off where you have to be there. And in our line of business, everything revolves around football. So football season, usually not a great time to just take a whole bunch of time off. You're the commissioner. You have set a deadline of February 28th to get a deal done. And if you can't, that would be disastrous for the sport. Now, I know you are painting that as disastrous because the players couldn't come meet your terms or what have you. But you're the commissioner of the sport, and you didn't show up until Friday. Friday. That's one of those things where, like, Rob, sorry, you have to be there. That's requirement 101. If we are in a CBA and the two sides are meeting, you must be there. You can't be phoning it in on a Zoom call from wherever. You must be there in the room, hearing what's going on and trying to be a voice of potential reason, even though you represent the owners. Like, your job is to represent the game. The owners pay you to represent the game and oversee the game. At some point, you got to be there and say, fellas, I understand your position. Can you give them a little something? Like, and I don't mean like a couple of, like, give them a little something. Like, if we do not play, yes, you will be fine. Yes, you can go 10 games or whatever and still make money. But your product will take a hit. The end. Like, somebody has got to do that. And
Kevin,
again,
I think most people are frustrated. I do. And granted, I have a very small circle of just people I talk to and columns I read or whatever. But I don't think this is something that baseball just kind of snaps its fingers and everybody looks around and goes, oh, yes, baseball back. Awesome. I think people are going to be frustrated. I think people are going to be jaded. I think people are going to be disappointed. And obviously, the longer this goes on, the more pronounced that becomes. I mean, if you get a deal done tomorrow, I think there will be a collective sigh of relief. But I think that the disappointment increases at an increasing rate, meaning tomorrow, if it's not there, there's more of a letdown. Then the next day, there's more of a letdown. Then the next day, there's more of a letdown. And I think this builds and builds and builds. And the storylines are not good. I mean, read some of the reports from the kind of the
Sure.
national pundits, and this is bad for
now
baseball.
you're seeing reports of folks. They're saying that Major League Baseball ownership is reportedly cool with missing up to a month of games. That's ridiculous. Like that you
Do
don't.
they not understand?
No, and they probably don't care. And again, I've tried to say this to people a lot when they're like, "We the fans." No, you really don't. And again, BJ, we've said this before. Our game day experience is nice. Yeah, even at college football, NFL, but so much money has shifted over to the merch and not some fans, but the TV and streaming and all the media rights that go along, that the fans do account for some revenue, but the bulk
Okay, but
of
if
it
there's
comes
no
from,
games, there's no TV, radio, or streaming.
that is correct. I understand that part of it as well. And so my point being, if they reached a deal, you still have TV, even if the fans said we're not going, and every game looked like a Miami Marlins game and had like 1,000 people at it, they would still make money. That's the whole point of you're being stubborn here, and you're costing yourselves, reputation. You're costing yourself, resentment amongst the people who pay for your product, who want to see your product. And to me, that's not good, because ultimately it may not matter that they come to the ballpark, but it does matter that they watch it. It does matter that they consume it. It does matter that they're tweeting about it. It does matter that there's engagement.
Let me ask you
about
this,
it.
because
Like, that's the stuff that matters.
Yeah,
and now you're out here letting it leak out that we're willing to miss a month again.
Yeah, you
Heck
are
with
the.
that.
You're the biggest baseball fan I
Yes.
know. Okay, I really like baseball. You are baseball, Kevin Thomas.
Well, I don't know about
So,
that, but yeah.
so when you hear a comment that says, "Yeah, we're okay," I mean, as a fan, let's take away the media aspect where you're professional and analytical and all that. As a fan, what is your gut reaction to we're cool missing a month?
I mean, if I hear that the owners are willing to miss a month of games, they're willing to at least go that far. I mean, and when I say willing to, like, they're probably like, yeah, we're good. Let's just do it. Like, if we don't get a deal done until we've already missed a month of games, fine. It's like, I unfortunately, again, that's not good for the game in which you are involved. You want to talk about more? You got some people that cover Major League Baseball out here say, hey, players have been active. You have Bryce Harper, one of the faces of your game, right? I mean, BJ, you and I have had many of arguments about whether or not Bryce Harper is as good as people think he is on the baseball diamond. But we don't argue is that people know who he is, and he is one of the faces of the league. Putting out an Instagram, tweeting the Yomiuri Giant, saying, what's up? I got some time to kill, and he's wearing
Wow.
a Yomiuri. Yeah, yes. He's wearing, so, I mean, is that what we're doing? Again, because without a deal, hypothetically, Bryce Harper, Mike Trout, they can go play in other leagues and get paid until a deal's done. I know that's not the case for everybody, but I think that's where we're at, where neither side is willing to give at all. And if you have a negotiation where nobody's willing to give anything, that's not a negotiation. That's a hostage.
That's true.
That's a hostage situation.
Yeah, that's just people looking at each
so,
other.
I think when I again blame both sides in this, because you waited too much to really get serious, and you kind of procrastinated till the last week and said, oh man, I've had this big project due. We're going to stay up all night and try to get it done. And then you're kind of surprised when you get a D on it. Look, I look at it and say, look, the owners, have they been negotiating in bad faith? Probably. Have the players been serious about coming the other way on anything? Nope. So it seems like both sides are dug in here. And I tend to agree with you. Outside of the money that could potentially be lost, what is different next Monday than right now? Because I've said this from the beginning, BJ, once you go down this path of we're willing to miss games, as an ownership group, why are you not willing to miss 20 games? Why are you not willing to miss 40?
That's been my question all
why
along.
Are you not? We know why the players aren't, but as the owner of the team who has billions of dollars, if I'm willing to miss 10, why am I not willing to miss 20?
I can't
why
answer
am I
that.
not willing to miss 40?
I don't know.
Like, I can sit here and miss games all day.
And that's what worries me. Yeah.
And so I think that is one of those things that would be concerning to me, if that neither side has been willing to budge on anything. And you have an ownership group that, again, they're all very, very wealthy individuals. If they're willing to miss a month, why wouldn't they be willing to miss 2 months? They're not paying anybody, right? They're all independently wealthy. Again, they may be losing some money, but they know as soon as the game comes back, they'll probably get some of it back and then some. So, again, this is not a good afternoon for me as a baseball fan, and it shouldn't be for people who like the game. That is seemingly this thing is headed towards a cliff, and the two primary parties involved don't seem to be too concerned about it. I mean, they may feign like they are, but at the end of the day, neither side has put forth a proposal that's come out in public that shows they've been willing to move very much in anybody's direction. And that should be very disconcerting. We've got more to come. Here's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, as we take a deep breath from the baseball talks. A lot of good stuff going on locally. High school basketball down to the Elite Eight. BJ, you got Calvary Day in the Class A private boys side still in it. The Brunswick High Lady Pirates at the 6A level still in it at the Elite Eight level. And at the 3A level on the girls side, Pierce County still in it. But kind of the story of the tournament so far is Region 3 AAA with Windsor Forest, Groves, Beach, and Johnson. All four of them have made the Elite Eight, and if they all win, they would all be in the Final Four. So you'd have all four teams from the same region in the Final Four if they win upcoming. But as it stands, you have one region representing 50% of the Elite Eight right now.
But just to reiterate, the way it could play out with 4 wins, you would have a Final Four
different opponents
of Region 3, 3A all in the Final Four. Wow, just absolutely. Yeah, Cam, it's a region tournament. That's absolutely incredible. But congratulations to all the student athletes, boys teams, girls teams competing for state championships. You feel pretty good that you're going to have some teams advance. Obviously, mathematically, some will. But, boy, you think about high school basketball in the 9-1-2, Coastal Georgia, Southeast Georgia. You've had some great teams over the years, boys and girls, and this year appears to be no different. But, I mean, Kevin, in your mind, I mean, is there a good chance we could have an all Final Four from Region 3, 3A?
I think there's a possibility of. I mean, obviously, a couple of those teams are going to be favored. As Windsor Forest has been one of the best teams in the state all year. Groves has been really good. I think Beach and Johnson. Johnson's a tremendous basketball tradition program. I mean, there's a possibility. I would say 3 of the 4 could certainly move on. I mean, you're getting down to this point where you're playing great teams, but why not? If all 4 of them make the Final Four, that would be a heck of a story.
Incredible basketball
here. You played all season. You played the region tournament, and now you played the postseason just to get right back where you started and have to play each other.
Region tournament 2.0
to go win a state championship. So certainly a story to watch this week as they play the Elite Eights and the Final Fours there in the state basketball tournament. We got much more to get to coming up next hour. We will take 3 right around the corner on this Monday. Also upcoming, we will chat with Shane Howland. Draft Countdown, the Combine this week actually starts tomorrow. He'll join us next hour. Jake Roos, Dogs HQ, part of the On3 network, will join us as Georgia's hired Stacey Searles as their offensive line coach. So all that coming up and more in hour 2 here on 3 and Out. Welcome back. Hour 2, Kevin and BJ here on this Monday. A lot coming up here on 3 and Out. Shane Hallam, Draft Countdown, will join us. The Combine gets started this week in Indianapolis. He'll join us in about 20 minutes, and we'll get the very latest ahead of the Combine. Also, Jake Roos of Dogs HQ, part of the On3 Network. He will join us as Stacey Searles coming back to Athens as the offensive line coach, formerly at Georgia, coming back this time from North Carolina, where he was offensive line coach there under Mac Brown. So Jake Roos will join us this hour as well. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. We've got Cam helping us out here on Take 3 on this Monday. What you got, Cam?
All right, take 1. Entering the Combine week, how many players realistically have a chance to be drafted number 1 overall?
I don't know how many guys you've seen. I think going back through my mock draft database in my mind, I've seen obviously Evan Neal. I've seen Thibodeau and Hutchinson. I've seen Charles Cross and Ika Mekwanu. So I've seen 5 or 6 guys in various mock drafts go number 1 overall. I don't think beyond that. I don't think Kyle Hamilton's going to go number 1 overall. I don't think just given the positional value of a safety. I don't think you're going to see like a Kenyon Green or one of the interior linemen. I think definitely Neal's the favorite, and I think he's the betting favorite right now to be the number 1 overall pick. I think Ekwonu and Cross are both realistic options because they're big time offensive linemen, and I think Jacksonville at the end of the day wants to protect Trevor Lawrence. I would maybe even lean those 3 guys over the edge rushers, but just given that I've seen it so prominently realistically, I guess I'll throw Hutchinson or Thibodeau in there. So if you want to say Neal, Ika Mekwonu, Kevin, you're shaking your head.
No,
Charles Cross.
There's 2 guys. I mean, look.
I think it's the Jaguars. It's the Jaguars.
They're not going defensive end. They're
it's one guy for me.
Yeah.
I hope it's Neal. I hope y'all are right. I'll say 5.
I to say 1, I kind of agree with Cam, unless he just shows up and he's like put on 50 pounds and he can't move and bend over and tie his shoes and he just looks like he hasn't done anything to have to do anything with football in like the last ever. Like, that's the guy. He started every single game, every single day at Alabama, the end, from the time he showed up on a roster that
you
was
trust
full
the Jaguars
of dudes.
to make the right pick?
No, I don't. But I mean, if you talk about who realistically could go number 1, there's 2 guys. I think it's him, and if you don't like him, Evan Neal, for some reason, you go with the Ekwonu. So I say there's 2 guys.
I think it's 1. I think it's Evan Neal. If the Jags trade back, then I think the other guy that I would mention is Aiden Hutchinson, based off the height, maybe Thibodeau, what he does at the Combine, because we know he's extremely fast and gifted. But if I had to say just if Jags are staying put at 1, I would just go Evan Neal. So that's what I would do.
I'm going to say keep an eye on all the offensive linemen. Ika Mekwonu out of NC State, Charles Cross out of Mississippi State, the tackles.
All right.
And take 2. At what position does the 40-yard dash time matter the most?
Okay, this is interesting because I think we all agree that it probably doesn't matter to the extent that we think it matters.
Yeah.
If you can run a 4.4 in your underwear in a straight line, that's incredible. But do you do that quite often in football? No, you're wearing pads first and foremost, and you're moving. And that's why I kind of think this may be a hot take, but I kind of think the 40-yard dash time is a little overrated at corner, because if you're a corner and you're running in a straight line forward 40 yards, something really bad happened. That means you got beat over the top on a go route. Corners backpedal. That's where, the majority of what a cornerback does in terms of read and react is right there at the line of scrimmage. You're backpedaling, you're shifting, you're changing directions, but it's not I'm sprinting forward in a straight line. If you're running for 40 yards in a straight line, again, something bad happened. You're chasing somebody. I think running backs, again, there's so much of a change of direction. There's so much shifting. Edge rushers, linebackers, it's more kind of short space speed. I think with wide receivers is probably where it matters the most, because if you were to ask at what position do you regularly run in a straight line for 40 yards, I think wide receiver. Now, are wide receivers, shifting? Are they running routes? Yes, they're not always doing that. But I think of all the positions, that's the position where it happens most frequently. And it's no guarantee. I mean, we've seen guys that have run 4.3s who have not had great careers in the league. We've seen guys who have run 4.6, 4.7s at wide receiver who, you know what? When the ball snapped, they play faster. They have other skills beyond just straight line speed that help them manifest potential into production. But I think if it matters, it probably matters in terms of positional value more at wide receiver than some other positions?
I don't even think it matters there. I think you look at, to me, 40 times. I don't think it matters for any position. Darius Hayward-Bay is a guy when he run like the
It's
fastest.
like your third reference of him, like in the last 2 weeks.
I'm sorry, he brings up my point. I mean, he makes my point for me. So, I mean, I just look up Cooper Kupp, most dangerous guy in the Super Bowl, Ben said 4.6, 40 at the 2017 Combine. So, to me, 40s, I think 40s are good for the psychological factor because you can line up and go, man, this dude runs a 4.2. As Ben said, doesn't mean anything if you can't play football, if you can't catch and do all that. I think 40s overrated for a lot of folks. Offensive linemen, why are you running 40s? Defensive linemen, why are you running 40s? As Ben has said, the only time you're running 40 yards is if a big play just happened and you got to hurry up and get down there. So outside of that, edge rusher, maybe. But again, you're talking about that's more burst and acceleration. Get me 10 yards to that quarterback. Linebacker, kind of the same thing. Can you move in space? You play a lot of zone. Can you pick up a guy and run with him for 10 or 15 yards while he gets into his route? I think the 40 to me is one of the most overrated things. So I say it's important to nobody because we've seen guys who maybe aren't the fastest, but they can cover. There's no running in a straight line in football very often, even on kick returns. You're going to have to make a cut. Can you change directions? Can you change directions fast enough and get back up to speed? I think the 40 is good for fans and intimidation factor because in your mind, you're like, oh man, this guy is fast.
Yeah, it's
and that's
hard.
But I don't think it matters at all.
Yeah, it's hard to rate the level of importance when it comes to 40 times because, I mean, a guy can run a 4.6 at the combine, but game speed is totally different. But if I had to choose a position, I was going to say wide receiver. Don't want to pick that. I'm going to say safety. The only reason why is you have to be sideline to sideline with your safety. If you're in cover 3, you're playing the single high safety. That guy's sideline to sideline.
Yeah.
Cover 2, you still got to get from the middle of the field to the other sideline, whether it's the right or left hash. So I would go safety. I'm not a huge fan of the 40 either. I think it's kind of overrated. But if I had to choose one, it'd be safety. Take 3. Evan Neal, Derek Stingley, Matt Corral are among those who won't work out in Indianapolis. Will it matter?
I'm gonna say it doesn't. And BJ, we've had this discussion for a couple of years around the combine. Like, is it losing relevancy as far as going to show up and do the drills? Because it used to be, obviously, a while ago, like you couldn't just look up tape every day. It wasn't cost effective to go around to 100 schools and look at the top players. So we're going to bring you into Indianapolis. Hey, we'll get you here. We'll look at everybody. All the teams are in one spot. We'll do interviews. We'll work you out. We'll measure you. We'll weigh you. We'll let you, pump some iron, do all that kind of stuff. Now, what are the lead stories that come out of every combine? Who ran the fastest 40, which we just said we all think is pretty nonsensical. It doesn't really matter. Who bench pressed the most? Maybe that matters. And who looked the fattest? Right? Is that not what we get?
No, that's true.
That's what we talk about. Hey, so-and-so showed up, looked a little pudgy, looked a little round. Like, that's what we talk about. Oh, and whose, Wonderlic score got leaked. Outside of that, just the pro days and all that. I think there's so many ways to see guys now that having them all come to the combine and do certain things is just kind of a waste of time. The 10-yard shuttle. Do I like it? Sure. It measures kind of the quick change, explosive, especially with offensive linemen. Can you change directions and come back and adjust to a guy coming off the edge? Or if you're a defensive lineman, can you go this way and cut back and make a move? Okay, that 10-yard explosive does measure something, but it's not the end-all be-all if you don't do it. So I think the combine, as far as a workout regimen, really didn't have a whole lot of relevance anymore because everything we talk about is nonsense, right? The vertical jump. Of course, we all know everybody, it translates 100%. When we run that fade to Calvin Johnson in the back corner, remember when he stood flat-footed and jumped 100 inches with no pads on and all that kind of stuff? No, all that matters is he's 6'4", the DB's 5'10",
to your
and we
point,
threw it over his head.
I was reading some stories today that said one of the leading storylines entering the draft is Kenny Pickett's hand size.
Can he throw the ball or can he not throw the
craziest
ball?
thing.
And I'm like, we've seen him throw. I know Christian told us a couple weeks ago that the Pro Bowl is a little bigger, but he's been throwing the Pro Bowl. It's not like that Pro Bowl. It's not like he's never thrown the Pro Bowl.
When you look at the lead storylines that come out of the combine anymore, it's usually something like who ran the fastest 40, only because that's kind of the one that catches people's interest. Who was fat? Who was weak? It's never good stuff. It's always like who couldn't bench as much as we thought they could, who looked a little fat, and
But for guys like
who
this,
got like a 2 on the Wonderlic. That's what we talk
the
about.
guys. Yeah, I mean, this stuff is nonsense. I agree. The guys that you asked about in the question, Evan Neal. What more do you need to see from Evan Neal?
Absolutely.
Okay, if Evan Neal comes out and he runs, okay. If he comes out and he lifts, okay. To your point, you know why you know Evan Neal is a stud? Because he showed you every single snap at Alabama. Same for Derek Stingley. What more do you need to see from Derek Stingley? Dominated college football as a true freshman. Was maybe the top defensive player in the country as a true freshman at LSU. You've seen everything you need to see. Matt Corral. Okay, so if Matt Corral runs a 4.89, he's good to draft. But if he runs a 4.98, he's not good to draft. I think there are some guys, maybe guys who weren't overly productive in college, or guys who didn't get to play a ton, or guys who didn't have a ton of production opportunities, that maybe you can kind of open eyes a little bit in terms of what they can do with the combine. You can see a little more of them. You can, learn a little more about them as prospects. What more do you need to know about Evan Neal, Derek Stingley, and Matt Corral? And Ben has talked about, we'll have him back tomorrow. Hey, I didn't work out at the combine. And I think for Ben Troop coming out of Florida, averaging 16 yards per catch, first team All-American. What more do you need to see? You have seen 12 weeks or whatever it is now, 15 weeks of game tape affirming that these are the best players in the country.
And I think more importantly is as Ben said, like Ben Watson was already a physical freak, but I think, even Ben would say, if you look at the game tape, Ben Watson probably made a few extra plays that maybe our Ben did not. And Ben Troop maybe did a few things that the other Ben Watson couldn't do. What does it come down to? Talking face to face. And is this guy a better fit for our organization than some? To me, I think that's a lot of it at the combine, is getting to sit down with all the teams. They can do a medical workup on you, make sure you're not hiding anything. Are your knees fine? Your feet fine? Your hands fine? Like, yep, everything.
But I've seen some questions. Is Evan Neal still going to be the number one? What are you needing to see in Indianapolis? I mean, what more is there for him to prove?
I don't think he has anything to prove. Evan Neal shouldn't have to do a workout. The only workout he should be doing is walking on that stage, getting a cap from the Jaguars. That's the only workout he should do. He shouldn't have to work out. I'm just saying. But Matt Corral, I don't think he has to work out. I mean, what do you need to know? He is fast. He's mobile. He can throw the ball. Stingley, I don't think he has anything to prove. I would want him to work out only because it's for him. I haven't seen him on the field in the past 2 years since his freshman year. I think he has something to show them, not as far as his skill set, just the fact that I'm here, I'm willing to show work, because some people question his motor past year or two because it's been kind of, a disaster at LSU for the past 2 years. So I would probably say I would like to see Stingley out there to just show guys, like, I'm still the best corner. That I think he's the best defensive player in the draft. Best corner, best defensive player in the draft. I got a lot to prove. So
that's take 3. We do it each and every day. This time we'll come back. Shane Hallam, speaking of the draft and the combine, he will join us next from draftcountdown.com. And we'll talk about some of those guys here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back here, 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you're making us a part of your day to combine beginning this week, tomorrow. As a matter of fact, they're in Indianapolis. Joining us here from Draft Countdown, Shane Hallam joins us here on 3 and Out. Shane, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me.
What really, we were just debating this last segment, what really could change at the combine this week as far as the top handful of players are concerned?
I think there's a little bit that can change. The combine is kind of an opportunity for teams to see these players back to back to back going through the same drills, and not just the 40 time and the 3 cone, but they go through positional drills too. So you really get to see kind of apples to apples, same weather in the dome. You get to see everything back to back. I think we could see some things change at the top. We found out today Evan Neal, the offensive tackle from Alabama, will not work out. But the guy he's kind of competing with, Ike Ekwonu from NC State, will. So I think that could even put Ekwonu in a position where the Jaguars at number 1 are maybe looking, okay, Ekwonu came out, he competed, he wanted to do everything. He's exactly the type of offensive tackle Doug Peterson likes. So I actually think this could change who is most likely to go number 1 overall even.
What storylines from the combine do you pay the most attention to? We, as Kevin said, we're kind of debating the value of some of the drills and guys working out, guys not working out. But what do you think matters the most at the combine?
I think it's kind of a holistic look at a player, right? And I know that's probably not the best thing to say or that it's everything. But I think when you take not just the 40 time, that's what everyone likes to look at, but what's agility look like in the 3 cone, in the shuttle? What is the explosion look like in the vertical, and how does that compare to their size? I think that's a good way to kind of take it. It's not necessarily who's the fastest, who's the most athletic, but who's the most athletic, but also is pretty big for their position. That can also play into it. So when we look at like a player like Treylon Burks out of Arkansas, the receiver, he's a player who is going to come in probably the 220s, a 6'2", and he's going to run, a 4.4 or something. And probably the other drills are going to be really good. So even if there is a receiver or two that runs faster than him, here's a guy 220 pounds that can run the way that he does, that's agile like he is. Yeah, those are the type of things I think that you look for, who kind of has that full package that we can build. And then I really like the drills. I think when you look at like running backs catching the football, that's something a lot of them are not asked to do in college. So sometimes you can get kind of a cue in on a player who is good at catching. We saw A.J. Dillon a couple of years ago, plays for the Packers now from Boston College. Didn't catch the ball in college, looked really natural at the combine. Now he's a really good pass catcher. So I think you can pick up on some of those things too.
Shane Hallam joining us here on 3 and Out. And Shane, you go back to Jacksonville there at number 1. Is it feeling like as long as they don't trade out, it's going to be one of those offensive tackles that they do take number 1, or is it still up in the air as to what Jacksonville could do?
I think it's still a little bit up in the air. Maybe I'm just slow to change, but I do think the 2 edge rushers, Kayvon Thibodeaux out of Oregon and Aiden Hutchinson out of Michigan, are a step better than the 2 offensive tackles. But when you have Trevor Lawrence sitting there, he got beat up this past year, wasn't a great season. I can understand the approach of let's get that franchise left tackle, and I think that will be the focus. They already have a really good pass rusher in Josh Allen, who we saw last year against the Bills play really well. So I think it is probably between those 2, Evan Neal from Alabama and Ike Ekwonu from NC State. I think when we get to April, there might be some buzz about the edge guys. I think we see one of the offensive tackles go off the board.
In terms of who could boost their stock, I know you mentioned Ike Ekwonu. Who are some of the guys he included who have a chance to maybe go from being, top 20, top 15, top 10 type picks to maybe moving up a couple of spots even?
So I think there's a bunch that have that shot. I think receiver-wise, Drake London out of Southern Cal, outside of Burks, is the other player who had an ankle injury in the college season, was probably playing his way into the top 15 and had that injury. So I've heard he's probably going to work out, may not do everything, but if he comes out and looks healthy, has some good times, he's almost 6'5". I think he's a player that can prop himself up into that position. A guy to kind of look for maybe to make his way into the first round and start getting that buzz is Boa Mafe, the edge rusher from Minnesota. Had a really good Senior Bowl week, had a really good Senior Bowl game. 6'4", 255 pounds. And I'm hearing he can even run as low as 4.45, which would be an incredible 40 time for a player of his size. He's a super athletic, really long. I think he could, work his way up into that high mix. And then I think at corner, one player that's starting to already get that buzz is Ahmad Gardner from Cincinnati, who has never allowed a touchdown in his college career. I'm really interested to see how his athletic ability is, because I think on film he wasn't really asked to do a lot of athletic things. So this could be a chance for him to show out, claim his spot as the number one corner, and possibly be a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick.
Shane Hallam, Draft Countdown, joining us here on 3 and Out. And Shane, the Atlanta Falcons here in our state, they're at number 8. So many needs, so many holes on this roster. What are they looking to do there with another top 10 pick here in back-to-back years? They're at number 8.
I think number 8's a good position for what they need. I feel like Atlanta is one of those teams that every year I'm like, man, they really just need someone to rush the passer, right? And this is a great year for that. Maybe a Kayvon Thibodeaux or Aiden Hutchinson fall, but I think that next tier of pass rushers are also really good. David Ajabo out of Michigan, Aiden Hutchinson's teammate on the other side. He's going to have a big combine, almost 270 pounds, really explosive first step. I think he would be a consideration there. And then Jermaine Johnson II out of Florida State, a Georgia transfer to the Seminoles, who had an absolute killer season, really good at the Senior Bowl, just doing everything correctly, checking all the boxes. So I think those two players, if they're looking at edge rusher, could be a real possibility. And, I think there's some outside chances that maybe they surprise with that pick. Maybe we see them go for another weapon, maybe a Treylon Burks out of Arkansas, especially if Calvin Ridley gets traded or moved, or maybe even go linebacker. I think Devin Lloyd out of Utah is a player that's going to start catching a lot of buzz, and he's someone that can play in pass coverage, be a good tackle guy. He could be a stud linebacker for the Falcons. So there's a lot of possibilities, but there's going to be some good value there at 8.
Entering the combine, is the order already set at quarterback in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or is there still plenty to be determined there in terms of quarterbacks who could go in the first round, maybe even go in the top half of the first round?
I think the top is pretty well set. I think we're going to see Malik Willis out of Liberty be the number 1 quarterback off the board after the bowl game that he had and the offseason that he had, the good Senior Bowl week. I'm interested to see if he runs. I don't think he's going to work out. He's just super athletic, doesn't really need to. And I think Kenny Pickett out of Pittsburgh is a player that NFL teams like a lot. He'll probably be the number 2 quarterback off the board. After that, I think it's open. I don't think anyone else is guaranteed to go in the first round. Matt Corral out of Mississippi, the quarterback, he injured his ankle in the bowl game. Won't be working out, won't be throwing. Maybe there's a chance he still does some drills, but he's definitely not going to throw. So I think it hurts him. He's going to be a wild card. Maybe he could go late first. Maybe he could fall to the second. I think the other guys are fighting for just a spot in the first round. Sam Howell out of North Carolina, Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. So this combine could actually help separate some of that bottom half. Who do you want to take? Maybe Detroit at pick 32, taking a player to get that 5th-year option. This might help them out.
Who's the guy you think teams are going to fall in love with at the combine? It seems like every year there's a guy that comes in, has a heck of a workout, interviews, he just kills it, and then everybody all of a sudden is in love with this guy that was kind of off everybody's radar. Who's the guy that you think is going to be kind of the combine darling, if you will, that maybe even people start floating stuff out there just to throw people off, but who's that guy here in 2022?
The name that sprung to mind is Tariq Woolen, corner out of UTSA, 6'3", 205 pounds. He could be a 4.4 runner. He's just this big, long press corner who is really athletic and really fast, pretty raw player. But that's the kind of guy that becomes a combine darling, right? He has these big workouts. He's big. He's strong. It doesn't matter that he played at UTSA. It doesn't matter who he played against in his college career. Then he starts getting that first-round buzz. Teams start falling in love, and they want to kind of jockey for position. So I think after this week, Woolen is going to be a name that's going to be on the national radar.
I know the Georgia Bulldogs are going to be well represented in Indianapolis. How many Georgia players do you think could potentially go in the first round by the time the draft gets here?
Oh man, I mean it's such a good class. The defenders are so good. I mean, I think there's a shot that all three of those kind of lineman types could go. I think Travon Walker is going to go really high. He might even be in play for a team like Atlanta at 8. And I think Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt both have a shot to go in the first round, maybe the back end of the first round. Nakobe Dean, if he has a good combine, I think the combine is going to be key for him. I think the first round's probably a lock for him. And then I think Lewis Dean as well has a shot. This is going to be a good chance for him going up against some athletic safeties. He's my number 2 safety in the class. So I think he's another player that's probably a first-round pick. So I would say, you're looking at 3, 4, 5, 6 that have a chance. And that's really, really high for any school. But Georgia's defense is just so good that you have to imagine a number of those guys teams are going to want to have on their side.
Shane Hallam, Draft Countdown, our guest here on 3 and Out. Shane, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Shane Hallam, Draft Countdown, joining us here on the program. Speaking of those Georgia Bulldogs, Jake Roos will join us when we come back, as there's a familiar face back in town along the offensive line, coaching those guys up. We'll talk about it with Jake Roos next here on 3 and Out. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben will be back with us tomorrow on the program. But breaking news out of Athens, a familiar face back in to coach along the offensive line. Stacy Searles back in, hired by Kirby Smart. And here to talk about it from Dogs HQ, part of the On3.com network. Jake Roos joins us here on 3 and Out. Jake, welcome. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you guys for having me.
So Stacy Searles back, new head coach this time, but how is that going to be received there in Athens? Obviously, you lost a wonderful offensive line coach to Arkansas. Then Matt Luke steps away. How's Stacy Searles welcome back in Athens?
It's been a pretty mixed bag, to be honest with you, so far. I'm not gonna try to sugarcoat that. I don't think fans have been super impressed with that one. I think just a lot of memories from the old Rick regime. Those were good times overall for Georgia fans. I think they enjoyed those times, but at the same time, there were probably bigger aspirations. And given what Kirby Smart's done, those are the expectations now. So, Searles, I think, is a guy who's got something to prove when it comes to the fans. Obviously a guy who has coached a lot of places, had a number of stops at big programs, and, has a lot of familiarity with athletes as well. But I think that he's going to have some winning over to do when it comes to this fan base. And, I get that. And I told somebody earlier, I think that it comes from a place where you said, you get a guy like Matt Luke. Obviously, he is an SEC former SEC head coach. Sam Pittman, one of the great offensive line coaches in this country, now a head coach at Arkansas. I mean, it was a tough act to follow for anybody who came in. So, I kind of feel for him in that regard, but simultaneously, Kirby Smart's done pretty well on the hires so far. Be interesting to see how this one pans out.
So entering the spring, what are the expectations for Coach Searles and this offensive line? I know you returned some key guys, Warren McClendon included. How good can this offensive line be, and what is Kirby Smart hoping to see out of that unit here in the spring?
Well, the sky's the limit for the offensive line in terms of the guys that they have in place. I mean, this recruiting has been outstanding for Georgia over the years. Stacy Searles not walking into a bare cupboard by any stretch of the imagination. So, I think the expectation is going to be to continue and pick up where they left off. Be solid, get out there, do their jobs, and compete. Going to be interesting to see, how some of these battles play themselves out. Where does Warren Erickson fit into this anymore? Who takes over where Justin Schaefer was? Is Tate Ratledge ready to put himself back into the mix? Is Broderick Jones the clear-cut number one left tackle? A lot of questions to answer, but like I said, they've got the players and the guys in place to do this. It's really going to come down to coaching and making sure guys are in the right position.
Again, it seems like Searles walking into a spot that a lot of the new coaches at Georgia is going to be like, hey, here's the keys to a Lambo. Don't crash this thing. We just won the national championship, right? Just don't steer us in a bad direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think realistically, the most important part for him and really anybody on the staff moving forward is you've got to, continue the trend when it comes to the recruiting. I think that's what's so huge. You've got to take a step forward. I think if you look back on this last class, I think people were a bit underwhelmed. I was with this offensive line class that Georgia brought in 2022. I think for Searles, the onus is there to take a step forward and make sure that he's able to rework those notions and move from there. And, if he's able to continue the recruiting that Georgia's had at that offensive line position, should be a self-replicating monster.
I know you've had some coaching changes in the offseason, entering spring. What are the big storylines as the Bulldogs look ahead to spring practice?
Well, obviously, everybody's going to be looking at quarterback. I mean, I think that's just the nature of the position, and certainly, when you're a Georgia fan, that's going to be part of it. And Stetson Bennett, and all the competition around him, a couple 5-star guys, a high 4-star, and Carson Beck. I mean, how does that all play itself out? That'll be fun to watch. I think that how the offensive line gels is huge. And then on the defensive side of the ball, what are they able to do over there with several guys in new positions? Will Muschamp now with that co-DC title, handling the safeties back there. You got Fran Brown handling the cornerbacks. How will he gel with that position group, and how will he be able to maybe elevate their game? And then, Shadera Uzo-Dariba, comes in and a young, untested guy replacing a guy who goes on to be a head coach of a major program at Oregon in Dan Lanning. A lot to prove for those guys. So, definitely going to be an intriguing spring, even coming off of the national championship. You certainly felt good about winning it, but, can you continue that success?
Jay, can I ask you a follow-up about Stetson Bennett? I know a lot of people are talking about the quarterback spot, but you're talking about a guy that obviously helped Georgia to a national title, finished in the top 5 in the country in passer rating, and I think was obviously the MVP there offensively of the title game. I mean, is there really going to be a competition in Athens? I mean, how's that going to work with Bennett returning?
I feel like Stetson's coming into this as QB1, no question about that. I mean, I think that, that national championship win certainly puts him in that position. But, Kirby Smart has been emphatic throughout his career at Georgia that, every position's open for evaluation. Everybody, it's never a situation where anything is set in stone. So, I think that the expectation really for that comes from, people who want to see, can these 5-star guys get in and overtake a guy like Stetson Bennett? Even with all of his experience, with all of the success he's had, can some of these guys who have, this high level of athleticism, IQ, I mean, guys who came out and were some of the most coveted prospects in the nation, can they overtake this job? And, listen, Stetson's not giving up anything so far, certainly not easily. So I don't know that it's the case that they will be able to, but I think that's where everybody's going to be looking for. I do think the competition to a degree will be open, but that's the case with every position across the field. That's not unique to quarterback.
I was going to say, Jake, how much do you buy that when coaches say, oh, it's open competition? I mean, how much of that is coach speak and trying to send a message to guys versus it's actually wide open and they're just going to let the best guy step up there and take it?
I really think that that there is some truth to it. I think that there has to be, because I think that if you're saying those things, especially out in the public and, making such a big focus on that, that you really damage credibility if that's not the case behind closed doors. I think that, guys have to feel that way. And the message that we've gotten from guys who've been there and have gone on from Georgia is that is the case. Best man plays. And, that's a week-to-week thing. I think that obviously you have some guys who have an edge who, can step in and kind of establish themselves and maybe put some distance between themselves and the next guy. But like I said, I think that you really risk damaging your credibility with your team when you do something like step back and say, this guy's firmly locked in. All these other positions are up for grabs, though.
Defensively, you mentioned no Dan Lanning. Obviously, you lose a ton of guys to the National Football League, going to be well represented at the Combine. Do you expect things to look much differently defensively, schematically with Dan Lanning gone, or do you think we'll see more of the same from the Dogs on that side of the ball?
No, I don't see much of a difference. I think that you'll see the continuation of what they want to do. I mean, I think Kirby's got a clear mindset of what that defense should look like, and I think that that's shared by his co-defensive coordinators, Glenn Schumann and Will Muschamp. I think that those guys will be able to replicate that to a very high degree. Like you said, I think the real question will be about replacing all of the talent, making guys gel, seeing how everybody fits together and all the pieces. I think that's what's got to be huge moving into this spring and into this fall. Is really just kind of creating that, sense of familiarity and brotherhood and camaraderie between that group, where they can kind of play off of each other on the field, be vocal with each other and create that open communication. Because like I said, you're replacing a ton of those pieces. That's going to be really interesting to see how it plays itself out. But in terms of changes defensively, hey, not broken, don't fix it.
Jake Cruz, Dogs HQ, part of the On3.com network. Our guest here on 3 Now. Jake, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Jake Cruz joining us and talking about obviously some new coaches come in with Stacy Searels saying, look, maybe some hearkening back to the Mark Richt era that some people have some consternation about. I know Mike Bobo's back in the fold. I actually saw some people like up there like, why is Kirby bringing back all the Mark Richt guys of Mike? It's like, you mean when you were putting up record offense, Mike Bobo, that guy? It's amazing that people will be upset about a number of things. Is Stacy Searels going to be Sam Pittman? Is he going to be Matt Luke? I don't know, but I mean, he's a good offensive line coach. He's been around football, and BJ, I kind of laugh when everybody's like, we'll just replace maybe you go around and people say this all the time. It's like, we have the best offensive line coach in America. We typically don't replace the best offensive line coach in America with the best offensive line. Like, it just doesn't happen continuously over and over again. I'm talking more about, Sam Pittman and all that. Why do you think people are getting frustrated a little bit? He said kind of met with warm, kind of to the hiring of that. And he had been a successful guy there with Mark Richt.
Yeah, good question. Obviously has familiarity with the program. I mean, you've mentioned this a number of times, and you're right. I know you've been able to elevate the status quo with Kirby Smart, and you've made history. But it's not like Mark Richt during that era. You were struggling. You were maybe a level below where you are now, but you were competing for SEC championships. You were competing for national championships. Offensively, you were very, very productive. I mean, you think about the Aaron Murray. Aaron Murray's the all-time leading passer in the history of the SEC. And you think about some of the production with the guys running the football, Todd Gurley, et cetera. So I think you had a big time production there. I think, Sam Pittman, it's really tough to replace. And then, like you said, or you heard Jake say, when you brought in Matt Luke, you got a position coach who had been a head coach in the SEC. I mean, that's a big time asset to be able to have a head coach of a former SEC program be a position coach. So I think when you talk about Sam Pittman, that was a guy that was beloved. When you think about Matt Luke, an incredible resume. Now, Coach Sherrills has been around, and I think a very impressive resume. You think about being at North Carolina. I mean, the offensive line for North Carolina helped the Tar Heels have great success offensively. You think about the two running backs that are in the National Football League, Carter and Williams. You think about Sam Howell, who might be a first-round pick coming up in April. So Coach Sherrills has been around, knows how to recruit, was just with a program under Mack Brown that was very successful on offense and had really good offensive line play. I think North Carolina was amongst the leaders in terms of fewest sacks allowed in the ACC. And then coming back to Georgia, knows the program, knows what it takes to be successful there, understands the expectations. I mean, he knows, and you're inheriting a really good group. Warren McClendon should be a preseason All-American, but just another storyline in the spring to keep an eye on for the Dogs. New offensive line coaches. Those expectations aren't going anywhere when you're the defending national champion.
Certainly. We've got more to come here on this Monday. Damian Moss, former Braves pitcher, going to join us in the final hour. Also a late ad. We're going to chat with Kevin McAlpin, Braves Radio Network. He'll join us coming up in the final hours. We're getting to the waning hours. What you have 7 hours and 10 minutes.
So it has to be in by midnight, I guess?
I guess, or they're just, I guess at some point they're either going to look at each other and say, see you later or something. But that's if you want to go with the deadline, midnight would surpass the deadline. Now, if they keep talking into the night, who knows? But we'll chat with Kevin McAlpin coming up in the final hour. It is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. Glad you are with us here on this Monday. And Major League Baseball continues to meet and discuss with the players. We'll get the latest on that. Damian Moss will join us. We'll talk about it from a player's perspective. Also, Kevin McAlpin, Braves Radio Network, will join us. I will say Major League Baseball Players Association have set up a spring training site in Arizona for players to go and work out and
Basically, to what mimic
get in
a
work. I
spring
guess
training?
get in work. I mean, to me, if I'm a player and you think it could it makes sense because if you can get a lot of buy-in on guys who can go and work out at these players set up, then technically you would need less ramp-up time to get back to the regular season.
So
potentially,
theoretically, it could, I guess, accelerate the return.
I would
once we
maybe
get to that point, or is
maybe
that
so.
reading too much into
I
it?
may be reading too much into it, but why else would you set that up? Otherwise, you could just have the full 4-week spring training or 5-week spring
So it'll
training.
be
lead up to the game. So
just whoever wants to go
I
can
think
go.
they're going to
or-
set one up. They've got someone set up in Arizona. They said they're looking to set one up in Florida. So my guess would be if you go to Grapefruit League teams, potentially National League in Florida, you go work out there. Arizona, you can go work out there and get work in and just be, I guess, all for one and one for all out there. But again, if enough people do it, I would imagine that would be a bargaining chip to throw out there and say, if we get this deal done, we may have missed spring training, but we've had 90% of the guys working out for 3 weeks. We don't need 4 weeks to get
They'll
going.
say, look, we want to play,
And we're going to get our
yeah.
162 wins still. So who knows where that leads? That was just thrown out there this afternoon. So I wanted to pass that along before we hit the top of the hour.
And Kevin, before we go to break, I want to encourage people. Ben, who'll be with us here tomorrow, wrote a really powerful piece sharing some perspective on Black History Month, obviously the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, and shared just some really powerful perspective. It's a story that's up on southernpigskin.com, and I think it's out on some social media channels, on our social media channels. So want to thank Ben for that perspective. Very powerful, and encourage people to check that out.
All right, you can check that out. Again, I know there's a link on southernpigskin.com on the Facebook page and Twitter page. You can link to that and read that from there as well. I encourage you to check that out and take a couple minutes to consume that. We'll come back. Damian Moss on the flip side, former Braves pitcher, will join us. Also, Kevin McAlpin in the final hour here as we've reached the make a deal or we lose games day in Major League Baseball. We'll hit that all in the final hour. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. Final hour of 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, thanks for making us a part of your day. Kevin McAlpin going to join us in about 20 minutes here on the show. We'll get his thoughts on where we stand here in Major League Baseball. And joining us here on the show, someone who certainly has a player's perspective, former Major League Baseball pitcher, former Atlanta Brave, Damian Moss joins us here on 3 and Out. Damian, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey guys, I can't hear you.
Thanks for joining us here on the show. When you look at what the players are going through right now, kind of explain why what they're trying to get is important, not just for the here and now, but for guys along the major league levels and guys who have yet to make it.
I mean, I want to start off by saying, I was a part of the collective bargaining agreement in 2002 when the players almost went on strike. I remember going to the meetings in 2002, and I also remember in 1994-95 where I had the opportunity to cross over because they had replacement players. But in 2002, like a lot of people don't realize, we're about to go on strike. Glavine was in Atlanta, and I'm sitting on a plane in Pittsburgh with the whole team, and all these guys asked me what's going on. And we sat on the tarmac for 5 hours because we didn't want to fly to Montreal. And we had a game that night. I actually pitched that night. They got a last minute deal done. I don't see this one getting done. And, the frustrating part is, based on what I've heard, is, I've heard today actually is, the owners are okay with, fans and everybody else missing the first month of the season. And that's disappointing.
What happens next? Because Damian, it sounds like the two sides are really far apart. Assuming a deal isn't done in the next couple of hours, we're going to miss opening day. I mean, walk us through this. What happens next? What has to happen to have baseball?
I mean, based like I said, everything I'm hearing is, through my connections and stuff that I have. But based on what I'm hearing is, like I said, the owners are okay with, losing a month of the season. And I feel like that's unfair for the fans. And, ultimately, yes, you're talking about billionaires against millionaires, and I get that. But, the bottom line is the fans. If you don't have fans, these guys don't make the money they make. And when you have the owners sitting there saying, hey, we're okay with losing a month of the season, that's not fair to the fans. The players have been sitting there grinding it out, and they're grinding it out right now with the owners to try and get a deal done to where, the season starts on time. It's unfortunate that the owners who are greedy, and they've always been greedy, are sitting there saying, yep, we're okay with, losing the month of the season. It's not fair to the fans. It's not fair to anybody.
Sure. Damian Moss joining us here on 3 and Out. And Damian, speak to, you said you had a chance to be in those meetings. Speak to what these guys in the room are trying to get for players. Some of the things we've heard about, want to get guys to arbitration sooner, want to get the bottom level of major league compensation brought up. How important, when you were an active player, were you willing to go in there and fight for the guys that were, year one, year two in the league, trying to get to arbitration? And how important is that, do you think, for this group of players to kind of make sure that, obviously guys are getting $40-50 million contracts, but how important are the guys that are, position 21, 22, 23 on the roster, that they get their kind of fair market value as well?
I was that guy. I mean, I'm the perfect example. I had the privilege of being a Super 2, and, a lot of people don't understand what a Super 2 is. And you know what? I had to work my butt off to get there. The frustrating part for me is whatever the Players Association does, the owners do, a counter offer. Like, and everything I've heard about today's meetings is they're close. I mean, they're closer. I wouldn't say they're close. They're closer. Do I think a deal is going to get done? I hope so. But, based on everything I've heard, when Rob Manfred and the owners come out and say, hey, we're okay with losing a month of the season, like that's not a good thing. And everything that we fought for in 2002, and then everything the predecessors before me fought for in 1994, 95 is still the same thing. We just want fair value. The owners are making billions, and people don't understand that. And guess what? I understand it, and it's unfortunate that the fans have to pay more money. It doesn't have anything to do with the players. It has everything to do with the owners, in my opinion, because they upcharge the tickets. It's not the players that are sitting there saying, hey, you need to charge this, you need to charge this, you need to charge this. It's the owners because they want to make more money.
How difficult is this for the players? You mentioned some people perceive it as billionaires versus billionaires. Not everybody, obviously, on a major league roster is making $1 million. But how difficult is this for the players to try to fight for what you want, but also do so while not getting paid and while seeing the game potentially shorten itself in terms of opening day being missed and the season not being 162 games?
I believe the players are going to stand strong. I've been, like I said, I was an assistant player rep when I was with the Braves, and I've sat in on these meetings. The unfortunate part is when you've got people that are really, really rich, when it's contained, to the owners and also the players, there's a situation to where, hey, we're going to stand and hold our ground because we know we're paying you a lot of money. But on the flip side of that, you also know that the players are the owners are making a lot of money. I mean, my perfect example is, if you look at the Braves, it's funny that it came out, last month, I think it was, to where, Liberty Mutual is traded publicly. So they get, the general public gets to see exactly what's made. And when you're making $564 million and the players' salaries, and I want people to understand that I'm not saying this in like a way towards the fans, but when you've got the owner of an organization like Liberty Mutual make $564 million, where they grossed all this money and they're still making plenty of money, and the players don't get paid to what the percentages are showing as far as the incline in inflation and all that stuff, as far as, how it's presented to the players and to the owners. There's always been a steady increase in the owners making more money. And there's always, the Players Association has always tried to navigate that same increase in player payroll. But when everything is going on now and we're trying to cut these costs for the players, it doesn't look good for the owners.
Yeah. Damian Moss joining us here on 3 and Out. And Damian, from a former player's perspective, obviously from the fans, we understand what you're talking about with the players wanting their fair share. What about some of the things as a former player that you see with the game, and maybe explain some of the behind the door thinking of, you got the competitive balance tax, which I know a lot of players will say is a tax on the top. Why don't we see a floor, and how much does it hurt the game when you have the Yankees and Dodgers spending over the luxury tax? And then I think you have 3 teams who are consisting a 26-man roster of less than Max Scherzer just got a contract for. How do you balance that out as a player to say, we don't want a cap, but at the same time, you literally have franchises that aren't trying to be competitive financially?
And that's a good point, man, because that's one of the things the players are fighting for, because there's organizations that are smaller market organizations that get paid by a lot of other organizations, but they intentionally tank to get higher draft picks, and then they're not investing in these players. I mean, you couldn't have made that any clearer. You know, you've got an organization and an owner that make billions of dollars, and they invest in a player, and you've got all these people paying into a pool that are paying to support this organization, and then they don't pay it. They don't put it into their players.
End of the day, how much baseball do you think we miss, Damian? Do you think it's only a couple of weeks, or maybe only a week, or could this thing unfortunately be longer than that?
I hope the guys get it figured out tonight, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, I find it kind of ironic that, you know, Derek Jeter stepped down today. You know, I mean, you know, because the Marlins, based on what I've heard and based on what I've read, is, you know, they didn't want to continue in the direction that Derek was doing with the Marlins. And you're talking about a guy that played, that's a CEO of the Marlins, and he steps down today because the Marlins decided to go in a different direction. What is that saying? To me, it's saying the owners are saying, nope, we're going to underpay these guys. And that's not good for baseball. It's not good for baseball, period. You know, you've got owners that make a lot of money. You've got players that make, you know, very, very good money compared to, you know, everybody. But when you've got a player, a former player, a Hall of Fame player that steps down from the Marlins, that raises a question for me.
Certainly. And again, we'll see. As you said, I think we're all hoping that we can get this thing figured out so we have baseball. But as you said, when the owners come out and say we're willing to miss a month, that doesn't sound like they're negotiating with any kind of sense of urgency. Damian Moss, our guest here on 3 and Out. Damian, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, guys. Good talking to you. And so hopefully we get this thing done.
We certainly hope so. We appreciate it. Damian Moss joining us here on 3 and Out, and we'll chat with Kevin McAlpin of the Braves Radio Network coming up. But BJ, just respond to some of what he had to say. Obviously, I don't think it needs to be prefaced, but I will say it just anyway. Obviously, Damian, as a former player, is going to have a player's perspective on it. But I don't think, if you see it from that way, that what he's saying is unreasonable, where you have owners making millions and millions of dollars, and yet Max Scherzer gets a contract worth more money annually than the Marlins' entire payroll, than the Orioles' entire payroll, than the I was going to say the Indians, but the what is their new name?
The Guardians.
The Guardians' entire payroll. And you have other teams paying in a pool to, quote, supplement owners, such as like the Orioles, who say, oh, we're small market. They're getting money from other teams to invest in their teams, and they're not doing it. And so I think that, to me, is a big crux issue that needs to be solved. Moreover, so just how guys are getting paid. It is, how do you make it so that every team must try to financially compete?
I think it's hard for people to understand.
Their roster.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for people to understand. And I mean, you've made a great point during this whole argument about teams that basically do the bare minimum or even less than the bare minimum in terms of roster construction, and then make a whole lot of money while investing nothing back into the game in terms of competitive balance. And I think that's a hard thing for fans to understand. Like, hey, why is my team not trying to maximize its
we even saw it.
Win?
Because it's become a strategy. I mean, we've even seen it.
But it's not fair to the fans. It's not fair to the players.
We've even seen it with the Braves, right? A couple years before all this started, the Braves did what? Hey, we're going to dial back payroll. We're going to bring it back. And then when we get the Acuñas and the Albies and some of these guys hitting the major leagues, we'll start to invest again and make a run at it. And I think that's what you're seeing. The Braves are kind of macro now. They didn't go from where they were down to like 30 million, but they dialed it back. Maybe knew they weren't going to be as good. And I don't know that is a good thing for the game. Again, I know players don't want a cap, but I say, look, when you have floors and ceilings, the NFL, everybody tries to compete. Jacksonville has the number 1 pick in the draft. They were the worst team in the NFL. They won how many games? 3. Okay. Out of 16 or 17, they were at least out there allegedly trying to win, right? And they're set up now to where they have to spend a certain amount of money. They're going to get draft picks, and they are trying to get better. NBA, right? You have teams that try to lose games, but they don't financially. They still have some guys that they're paying because they have to spend a certain amount on players to improve the product. And by and large, you don't have a lot of teams that you do have some, but you don't have a lot of teams where it's like they win 10 out of 80 games by and large. I think even the bad teams are up there 15, 20 time ball games where they're still relatively competitive. It's not just the dregs where you had a team last year, BJ, lost almost 120 games. Out of 162, that's not trying to compete. And I think that is what Major League Baseball players are trying to fix so that some of these owners, you have to at least try financially to go out and pay money, get players who are good to improve your team and not just rely on 19, 20-year-old guys to figure it out at the major league level. And if they get good, we'll make one go at it. And if it doesn't work, we'll trade them all and we'll start over. That's not a thing that's healthy for the sport. We'll come back. Kevin McAlpin, Braves Radio Network, will join us when we return. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, glad you're with us here on 3 and Out as Major League Baseball, as the gears turn here on negotiations. Joining us here from the Braves Radio Network, Kevin McAlpin joins us. Kevin, well, here we are, deadline day that Rob Manfred said would be disastrous if a deal is not met, and then reports coming out that the owners would be cool if they missed a month of the season. So I don't know if you can have it both ways there, but baseball fans obviously starting to get upset about potential missed games. Where is the game at right now, and do you think anything is going to get resolved before midnight tonight?
Well, let me put it this way. I helped coach my son's Little League team, and I had March 31st crossed out as an unavailable date, and I texted the head coach today and said, I can probably be there for that one. Unfortunately, it looks as though a deal's not going to get done today. Sides are still pretty far apart, and if the players' reaction is any way to judge, if you follow Bryce Harper, a really interesting Instagram post a little while ago of him wearing a Yomiuri Giants jersey, saying, hey, you guys awake over there? Justin Turner also taking to Twitter, voicing his displeasure with what's going on. It's not a good place right now with that deadline looming by the end of the day, end of the evening, I guess, if you will. So players are frustrated. Owners are not happy. There has not been a whole lot of, budging on either side of the aisle. And, look, I'm not a master negotiator. I'm just a guy with a microphone. But, when you come to these things, you're going to have some give and take. There's going to be some concessions that are made. You're going to have to, agree to some things that you may not necessarily want to. But that's how you get a deal done. And unfortunately, neither side has really budged all that much. Both these, parties are dug in pretty deep. So, again, unfortunately, it does not look like something's going to happen today. Hopefully these meetings will continue and they can find a way to get this done because, again, the last thing you want to do is start canceling games during the regular season. To me, in my opinion, that would be just disastrous for the game.
So when we hear reports that they're not close, I mean, what does that mean in terms of predicting the future? Does that mean that it's going to take 3, 4, 5+ more days to get close? Does that mean there's one potential point of contention that must be addressed? Does that mean that it's as bad as it reads, that we're going to have a couple of more weeks of this at least? How do you interpret them not being close?
Yeah, it's hard to tell because, John Heyman, as of last night, said, there was some optimism that maybe a deal could, come together pretty quickly today. And, again, I've been following this from afar going, well, again, if both sides haven't really budged, I think that's sort of a pipe dream at this point. So, again, it's a lot of economic, things they've got to iron out, minimum salaries, service time, arbitration. Major League Baseball wants a 14-team expanded playoff, going back to what they had a couple of years ago during the COVID shortened season. So, again, there's a lot of items on the table that I don't feel like a day or two is going to end up, making this thing happen. Which is why I think a lot of folks are frustrated from a fan standpoint, wondering why these meetings didn't happen in December and in January and in early February, why they had to wait until the very last minute. So, again, I know there's a lot of frustration for everybody involved. And the one thing I don't think gets brought up enough is a lot of times we talk about the players and the owners, but I don't think a lot of folks talk enough about, the other side of this where, you're looking at folks that are also going to be out of work, whether it's stadium workers, concession workers, parking lot attendants, folks like us in the media that won't have a job to go to. So it affects everybody, and most importantly, it affects the fan base. So, again, I've tried to be optimistic this whole process that something will get done. I felt like they were just too smart to let it bleed into the regular season. But again, unfortunately, with the way things have moved very, very slowly these, last couple of weeks, again, I just hope that if there is a deterrent to the regular season, it's as short as possible because and believe me, everybody wants to see these guys back on the field as soon as possible.
Kevin McAlpin, Braves Radio Network, joining us. Kevin, just from your standpoint, I know you love the game of baseball. How much of what's being discussed, talked about, argued about, I guess, in some cases, do you think at the end of the day is actually good for the game if it gets worked out? I know universal DH, people can go back and forth, but it seems to me at the core of baseball's problems is you have one guy that just got a $50 million deal right before the lockout started. Baseball owners saying they don't make enough money, but they're handing out $30, $40, $50 million deals. And you have teams that don't even spend that much on their entire roster. I mean, it seems like those might be some of the bigger issues. So how much of that is actually what we're arguing about here?
Well, and I think the one that makes most sense to me from a player's side of things is raising the minimum salary. And I know there's some folks out there listening going, wait a minute, do they really need more money? Well, think about it like for the case of a guy who's making the league minimum. And you might say, okay, he's making $585,000. Now, for all of us, that seems like a whole lot of money. But again, in the grand scheme of things, it takes you a long time to get to the big leagues. You've got to, ride the bus for many years. You've got to, go in the minors and just try to find a way to make ends meet. Trying to find a way to put food on the table, and then you get to the big league. And again, it's big money when you think about it, but when you break it down, you pay your agent, you pay your dues for the league. You have to pay the Players Association, you pay the guys in the clubhouse, the hotel attendants, and that 585 goes pretty quick. So again, I don't think the players are out of line asking for a little bit more when it comes to the minimum salary. Again, it's hard to get to the major leagues. It's really, really hard to get to the big leagues, and it's even harder to stay there. So I think incentivizing guys that do make it and put in that work to get there makes the most sense. But look, the one argument that I just have not been able to fathom throughout this whole thing is a couple of weeks ago when it was brought up, well, owning a major league team isn't all that profitable. Well, if it wasn't all that profitable, then why are 30 people out there doing it? Believe me, it's extremely profitable. It makes a lot of money, even in smaller markets where, you're not, on national TV every single night. If it wasn't profitable, people wouldn't do it. So, again, I think that the players certainly are justified in some of their asks and some of their wants and desires. And again, to me, it seems like, baseball, the owners, the commissioner are the ones really holding this thing up. And again, look, you can't place blame at this point on one side. There's blame to go around all around on this thing. But again, ultimately, I do think the players in some of their requests, some of the things they're looking for, they're not out of line for asking for some of these things.
What are you hearing from fans, Kevin? Do you think that if this goes on a couple of more weeks, people are going to, from afar, kind of understand it and say, hey, it's a negotiation, it's back and forth? Or do you think at the end of the day, baseball is really going to hurt itself in terms of fans getting upset, getting frustrated with the negotiations and with the way this has gone?
Yeah, there's words when we're on terrestrial radio that we can't say that I've read on Twitter in some of my mentions as far as where things are going here with these back and forth debates. Fans are not happy. Fans are frustrated. And again, ultimately, the fans are the ones that are hurt the most by all of this when all is said and done. So what scares me, and again, I love this game. Yeah, I have an almost 7-year-old son. He loves the game of baseball. And I love that there's another generation of guys that are growing up watching these players and loving the game of baseball. It's been around 151 years. And I want to see it stick around for another 151 years. But I'm concerned about some of the markets, like a Miami, that doesn't draw anybody anyway. Like a Tampa, they're a good ball club year in and year out. They can't put butts in the seats. Oakland, they're beginning a big time sell-off of a lot of their star players in a rebuilding situation. Again, will fans come back in that market for a while? Think about when you go back to 94 and 95, guys, it took up until the late 90s when a couple of guys that were on, juicing were hitting home runs every single night. It took a lot of markets 4, 5, 6 years to come back. And again, at this point, with so many other options, so many other entertainment options, I just worry about some of those smaller market teams, getting the fan bases to come back and support them. So again, that's what worries me as far as, we're always talking about growing the game, finding ways to get kids, to watch and play the game with so many other options. That's what kind of worries me is that what's the backlash going to be from the fans in some of these markets that are just going to say, you know what, we're not coming back. We said that years ago. We gave you the benefit of the doubt. We might not come back. So that's sort of where I am right now. Just wondering what this is, what kind of trickle-down effect this could have for the next 5, 10, 15 years when all said and done.
Yeah, and Kevin, I'm right there with you as I have 2 sons that play baseball, love baseball. And you look at it and say the love is there, but I think fans get frustrated at franchises who openly say losing is an acceptable strategy because we're gonna make a once-a-decade run with guys making the major league minimum that are really talented. And if we don't do it before they get paid, we're just going to trade them off and the whole process starts over. I mean, I don't see how both sides can't come to some agreement that is not good for the game where you have teams that financially aren't trying to go out there and compete as some sort of strategy. I mean, in every other league, some kind of minimum spend is put in place, and you see a rotation of teams into the playoffs and teams who have a chance.
Yeah, I think that the salary minimum, the floor, if you will, I think that would be good. I really do. I think having a minimum threshold that teams have to spend X amount of dollars on payroll, I think that would be important. Again, just be competitive. Put a team out there. And have fan. And again, I know that some of the players want to reach free agency earlier, but again, that goes back to the whole conversation of having guys that you can follow and watch them their careers evolve. You're right. There's teams that guys are around for 3, 4, 5 years and then they're gone and then they tear it down and then it's who are these guys now? And again, I know it's worked for some clubs. I mean, you look at the Cubs, look at the Astros, even more recently with the Braves. Their tear down, their rebuilds have worked, but they weren't extended, right? I mean, the Braves had a couple of rough years, but again, there was a roadmap of 5 years from now. Here's where we're going to be, and they got there. So again, I think that something has to be done about having that minimum salary just to make sure there is a competitive product that's on the field that people will say, you know what, I can justify spending $200 to take my 2 kids and my wife to the game tonight because I am going to see something that's going to be entertaining. And I'm going to see players who I know who they are. And, I don't have to do research to figure out who my starting 9 is on any given night.
How has this and the inability of teams to talk to players, et cetera, basically there being no baseball, how has this made the Freddie Freeman and the free agency uncertainty even more dramatic in that nobody, in terms of the rules allowed, has been able to talk to anybody? And I guess when and if baseball does reach an agreement, we're going to have just a crazy couple of days of players being signed.
Yeah, you're going to have the NBA free agency period, basically, where, 12:01 a.m., guys are just signing left and right, and it's just pure chaos. You're going to have probably a similar situation to what you had right before the lockout began, where, guys are just signing all over the place. I guess the benefit for the Braves is that everyone's on equal footing, if you will, where, no one's been able to talk. So it's not like the Dodgers have a leg up on signing Freddie Freeman over the Braves because they haven't been able to have those conversations. So, look, I know Freddie has made it clear he wants to be here. He told me as early as 2017 that he wanted to be a Brave for his entire career. I'll never forget that conversation in Orlando in the old spring training site, just me and him sitting in the locker room and him telling me that for the very first time. So, again, I think everyone's on an even playing field when it comes to signing free agency, and it's going to create a lot of excitement when those moves do happen. But again, I don't think that changes one way or the other if he's back here in Atlanta or if he's elsewhere. Because as long as everyone's following the rules, like you said, playing by the rules and playing fairly, then no one really has a leg up. If anything, I think the Braves would have the leg up, just given the fact that there's that familiarity with the city, with his teammates, with the organization. Maybe that does give them a little bit of an advantage. But again, he's a free agent and he's able to sign wherever he wants when that period does begin.
Kevin McAlpin, Braves Radio Network, joining us finally. Kevin, just for obviously listeners in our area and across Braves country, how tough is it coming off of a World Series championship to have to sit and say, when is baseball coming back? Yeah. When it's supposed to be this, epic lead up to opening day and the home opener where, everybody can once again, reconvene and, put that banner up in the outfield.
Yeah, it's a downer. It's a bummer for sure. I mean, you're looking forward to seeing the guys get their rings and being out there with a sold out crowd and, the hype up video of all the highlights from the run last year. And, everything's sort of like, wow, no one really know when that's going to happen. But when it does happen, it will happen. There will be baseball at some point. I can tell you that. When it does happen, it's going to be a great moment. And again, the fan support last year, guys, was terrific. 2.7 million fans came to Truist Park just during the regular season alone. And then, of course, that was the place to be during the postseason run. So, it's unfortunate. It'll be a great ceremony. I just wish it would happen sooner rather than later. And again, hopefully cooler heads do prevail and they get back to the bargaining table and find a way to iron this thing out, because you're right. It's the defending champs that everyone's excited to see them back and know that Acuna's coming and hopefully Soroka will be there. And, you've got the off-season moves they've made, which I think have been good. I think there's probably one or two more they might add. It's a bummer. And again, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that we see these guys back on the field real soon, because again, I'm getting to the point, guys, where my wife likes having me around in the off season, but she's saying like, you know what, I think it's time you get back to work. I can cook my own dinner and I can take care of the kids. You need to get your butt back to work. So I'm as ready as the players are. Believe me, guys.
And we hope we get there, as you said, very, very soon. Kevin McAlpin, Braves Radio Network, our guest. Kevin, thanks so much.
You got it, boys. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Kevin McAlpin joining us here on 3 and Out. We'll come back. We'll respond to some of that on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back, 3 and Out here on this Monday. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett. We appreciate Kevin McAlpin, Damian Moss joining us here on the show as Major League Baseball and the players meeting again this afternoon. Again, trying to hammer out a deal. Haven't got a lot of everybody's mad, everybody's this. So who knows what's going on in some of these meetings. A lot of the walking back and forth is BJ, they'll get together to meet and then go like, school children and go meet in their caucuses and come back and discuss some more. So you hope it gets done and gets ironed out. As we've heard multiple people say on the show, everybody loses, right? I know the owner's like, hey, we were willing to miss a month. Everybody loses in that situation.
I think the fans are kind of left feeling helpless, right? Where you read the reports and maybe every now and then they're closer than you think. And then, no, they're not close. They're not close. They're not close. And as a fan, you're just sitting around asking, well, what's happening? At first I was told we're going to miss some spring training, but again, it would be, quote, disastrous if we were to miss any regular season baseball. Now, within the next couple of hours, it looks like that's going to be a reality. And then, as you so aptly said earlier in the show, well, are perspectives changing tomorrow? Is everybody agreeing on Wednesday? What about Thursday? What about Friday? So as a fan, I know some people might say, well, BJ, why are you asking all the guests what the worst case scenario is? Because it's hard to envision a best case scenario, right? You've had a lockout since December. So you would think if progress was going to be made, it would have been made. And if you were serious, Rob Manfred, about it's going to be disastrous if we miss baseball, would it have gotten to this point? Within the next couple of hours, we're going to know for certain that opening day is not going to happen. And after that, what's next? So I hate to keep bringing this point up, but Kevin, unless I'm wrong and I have a kind of a off feel for this, I don't think we're talking about 4 or 5 games because is this going to change in a couple of days? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen Wednesday? And that is a very troubling comment. I don't know if it was from kind of the owners at large or one owner or whatever, but the comment or the inference that they might be okay missing a month of baseball. You might be okay so what's after that? 2 months of baseball? I mean, I don't see a lot of positivity here. I don't see a lot of reason for optimism. I hope I'm wrong. Certainly. I hope we, log off the show and we see that they've come to an agreement, or at least we're a lot closer than we were this morning. But when I hear things like the owners might be cool if it has to go a month, I don't know what kind of counter there is to that to say, no, they're not. And here's why. I don't know. And, Kevin made a great point. A lot of people are left in difficult spots when there's no baseball. A lot of people are left without a revenue stream, without opportunities, without jobs, without chances to do what they would regularly do. It's a bad thing.
Yeah. And again, I think for the good of the game, you need to play because baseball has stars, right? I mean, a lot of times people look at this thing, BJ, and they say, oh, it's this and that. And yeah, has baseball turned into a strikeout home run game? Yes. Is that the best thing for the game? Probably not. But baseball does have stars that are out there that people want to see. Does baseball do the best job of marketing their stars? No, they don't. There's a lot of things that I don't particularly care for when it comes to baseball. I think their commissioner is a clown show and shouldn't be in charge of a sport in which he refers to the championship as a hunk of metal. That probably is grounds for you to get fired, and you should
doesn't show up until the bitter end of the.
Hey, we're having a labor negotiation and I know people can do this remotely, but still, the visuals of you're having a labor negotiation between the owners and the players. You are the commissioner of the sport, and you don't show until after a week. Come on, that Rob Manfred is bad. I think it's fair to say he is not good at his job. I mean, that is. You are to be the ambassador. I know you work for the owners, but you are to be the ambassador of the game of baseball. And at that, he stinks. He's awful. So no love lost for Rob Manfred there. But again, everybody loses in this thing. Everybody loses in this thing if there's no baseball. You missed opportunities to grow the game in certain aspects. You missed opportunities to see guys in the prime of their career, depending on how long this thing goes on. And again, as I've said, you can look at other leagues and countless examples in professional sports where some of the things the players are asking for, everybody still makes boatloads of money. Have you heard any NBA owners saying they're losing money? And didn't they give players more of a percentage of their CBA last time out, BJ?
Now, Listen, I
Have you
think
heard
that,
what I'm saying? No, I mean, honestly,
of course not. But
have they been getting less?
no,
no.
I mean,
so,
look, I don't want to oversimplify, and I know you've said this before, but this really feels like this is the owner's mess. I mean, this really feels like this is the owners being unfair. Damian Moss said greedy, and yes, I think that's fair. I think that's what it comes across as. You're talking about some modest concessions. The game has grown in popularity, grown in financial opportunities, financial revenue streams. But if they're willing to hold out a month, I just don't know how it's getting better.
yeah, and apparently the players and owners just got done after a 50-minute session. They've had some off and ons. Now, if they're going to meet again today, I would imagine they would. So apparently, there's been like 3 or 4 back and forths between the players and the owners where they've had different meetings and sessions. Who knows if we're getting close? But again, I think a lot of folks think the sport will take a big hit if you miss a considerable amount of time, which hangs in the balance if a deal is not done today. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here on this Monday. Major League Baseball continuing to negotiate, I'm sure, into the evening. But if they don't come to some sort of deal, then Major League Baseball will begin canceling games. And we saw some reports that the owners were willing to miss up to a month of the season. That's certainly not going to sit well. Don't know if that's accurate, but I wouldn't be surprised if things get leaked out to try to spur negotiations. Again, it's a high stakes blame game. It's not the players, it's the owners. It's not the owners, it's the players. And you leak it out that the owners are willing to miss a month. Well, who do people get mad at? The owners who are willing to miss a month. We want to miss 0 times. So again, we'll see if they're able to come up with something, BJ, here tonight. If not, it would appear it would be heading down the road of at least opening day ain't going to happen.
Well, given what we've seen today, given what the last meeting was for 50 minutes.
But they've met 3 or 4 times. I will say most of the time by 4 o'clock in the past days, they've called it for the day. And at least it appears like they're not done. So,
but what are the chances in the next 3 to 4
saying,
hours that they resolve whatever unovercomable issue has been there?
Unless it's closer than people think it is, and you're floating stuff out in the media to try to push your side one direction or the other. Hey, we're not close. We're like trying to force those last minute negotiations because, again, once you cross over, it is real miss game checks, real miss revenues from tickets, not going to happen. And maybe, again, kind of like with the draft combine, how much of what you hear coming out through the media is nonsense, not because what the media is saying is nonsense, but because somebody's putting it out there to prove their point. So maybe they are closer to the fact that they've met 3 and 4 times today. Maybe it's getting down to some nitty gritty details of saying, look, this is the final hour. Let's hammer this thing out. I hope that's the case. I don't have a lot of hope that it is. We'll see. And that's where baseball is, the waiting game, right? At least the fans, players, and everybody else. Let's wait and see how this all turns out. Appreciate Kevin McAlpin joining us here, Damian Moss, in the final hour of the program. If you missed any portion of the show, ESPNCoastal.com. Go to our YouTube page at ESPN Coastal on YouTube. You can get a podcasted version of the show, and we will see you tomorrow. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.